Thank you. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is general public comment, a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at this meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote by the alderman present. Do I have any general public comments? We will close that and move on to consent items. Items 1 through 31. Do I have any public comments for 1 through 31? Jason Solomon? Okay. Any public comments? Closing public comments for 1 through 31. It's now consent items. Would we like to remove any items from consent items and vote on the remaining? Richie Nordstrom, Councilman Nordstrom. All right, item 12. Councilman Solomon. Any other items to pull from the consent? If not, may I have a motion to approve the consent items remaining?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approved minutes of January 9th, 2018. Do I have a motion for the approval? Okay, no need for approval. We have approved.
Yep, we have.
So with that, we'll move on to item number 7. And I will read it in. BW 013018-06, East Rapid City Water Expansion, Anderson Road Water Main Extension Project number 14-2194, CIP number 50964.B, estimated cost $870,000. And Chair recognizes Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could direct a question to Public Works Director Dale Tech. Dale, so do you want to give us a little background on this item?
Yes, thank you, Alderman Solomon. Actually, items 7 and 8 are kind of the same grouping of projects, if you will. Back in 2014, the City of Rapid City, working with the state of South Dakota, received grant dollars and a SRF loan to construct water out east of Rapid City, and the primary purpose for that was to supply water to 3 water systems that were private water systems that had water quality that did not meet safe drinking water standards. So over the last 3 years, the city has developed projects to extend water to provide safe drinking water to these 3 different areas. So these are the last 2 projects that are on the books for this, and hopefully get these moved forward, and we'll get the water to the folks out there that desperately need it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
To approve. Yep.
Motion by Richie Nordstrom, second by Jason Solomon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8, PW 013018-07, East Rapid City Water Expansion, Mesa View Estate Subdivision, Radar Hill Road and Morris Lane Water Extension, project number 14-2198, CIP number 50964.F, estimated cost $1,150,000.
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And we move down to item number 12, PW 013018-11. Joint funding agreement between U.S. Department of Interior, U.S. Geological Survey, and City of Rapid City for 2018 Water Reserve and Resources investigations for operation and maintenance of selected gauging stations and for hydraulic investigations including hydrology, hydrogeologic data collection and analysis, applications of groundwater flow, modeling, storm, water monitoring, and evaluation of selenium and other trace elements. And I go to Councilman Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, if I may make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion approved in second. Ritchie has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification on this item, these are for annual funding agreements that we have with the USGS and the gauging stations that we have around the city of Rapid City. The other further clarification is this does not involve the two gauging stations further upstream, up above Pactola, and there's one other location and that we do not take care of. So this just takes care of the local gauging stations in this area. So I just needed to make sure everybody understood it. It was not the two gauging stations that have been in public discussion here recently. It's all the other stations. So therefore, I'm supporting of the funding going towards the USGS monitoring stations. Thank you.
Thank you. And with no other conversation on the floor, I have a motion. Yep. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And we move down to our final 30, PW 01-301-30. Authorize mayor and finance officer to sign a resolution 2018-010, a resolution of intent to enter into real estate exchange agreements with Gerhardt and Elizabeth Heck pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 9-27-34.1. And Chair recognizes Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, may I direct a question to Public Works Director Dale Tech. Dale, can you explain a little bit about this ground swap that we have, what the background is and what the purpose of it's for?
Certainly. The city owns property out east side of town. It was actually purchased back in the late 80s, early 90s by the city for water rights, actually. The city has maintained the property in ownership and have an annual lease on it, I believe, for hang. There's an adjoining property that over time there's been some encroachments by both our hanging contractor as well as the adjoining property owner on the lands because they're not fenced nor well defined out there. So the city was moving forward with a project in the area and did some surveying out there and found that there were some encroachments by both parties. So the way to resolve that is to do a land swap. It's an acre for acre land swap on adjoining properties. It's in probably the best interest of both parties to move forward with this. Don't see any negative impacts to the city property, and also would certainly help the property owner that lives out there. So it's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, if I may make the motion to approve this.
So moved. Second.
If I may
Have the floor.
just a general comment. It just kind of demonstrates some of the wide open issues that we still have here in the West. And I know we run across different properties that are abutting each other, and there's no definite line where it draws, where you can actually see where whose property is who out there, especially in this area. And it's again, it's just a case of just being in the wide open West. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now on to non-consent items 32 through 34. We're now opening public comment for items 32 through 34, and I do have a speaker's request form from Dane Bosma on item number 34.
My name is Dane Boomsma, and I want to disclose that I have no financial interest in this item on the agenda, other than I'm here representing the industry. I'm a home builder. I'm also have a utility company, so we do underground utility, so somewhat of a subject matter expert as well. This is a good thing for the city to move forward. That's why I am here. I would like to get the projector going, and I'm not sure how to do that for sure. So while we're doing that, Rapid City is the only municipality in western South Dakota, the surrounding area, that it requires a Type K copper service line. Rapid Valley Sanitation District, which has a big portion, not a big portion, but a portion of their district within the Rapid City limits, will reject copper if you try to put it in the inside of their district. They require an HDPE pipe, which is completely different than our historic poly B or polybutylene that everybody hears about that has failed over the years, etc. We're talking 40 years of difference. Where's technology gone in 40 years? Let's not even talk about poly B because we're not talking about the same pipe. We're talking copper and HDPE. Box Elder now will accept either one of them, but I can guarantee you as time goes on, they're going to remove the copper because nobody's going to use it because of cost and life expectancy of the copper versus the HDPE. So everybody says copper is proven over the years to be good. Copper, as you know, is a metal. We have expansive soils in our area. We also have corrosive soils in our area. Copper is not forgiving to the shales or the curb stops moving, just like we had with our basements, and we made an adjustment to that ordinance to address that to protect consumers. We have the same problem with curb stops. I'm going to show you a couple examples of curb stop connections that have failed due to expansive soils, or simply somebody may be doing the wrong thing and running over a curb stop, which happens all the time. Okay, so this first piece of pipe, you can see that it's bent. So that was the connection at the curb stop. And so somebody either ran it over or it was installed incorrectly, which is a problem, but this shows the unforgiveness of the copper piping. Unfortunately, you can't see it real well, but there's a hole right here, right at where the connection was made. When you connect a piece of copper pipe, there's two metal bands on the inside of the gasket that seals it. Those metal bands actually cause the pipe to be corrosive, causing one small pinhole, and actually we could pass some of these pipe around and you could see over time how this copper pipe is corroding. We dig up several of these a year because of these exact instances. I have one piece of pipe, and I don't think the projector is going to show it, but right in the middle of this pipe, there's a pinhole. And if you look at this pipe is perfectly round. That pinhole was in the middle of a yard about 3 months after the pipe was installed. Yard's landscape sprinkler system. Me as the installer, I have to warranty this. There was probably an impurity while the copper was being made that caused this pinhole. There's nothing else wrong with the pipe but a pinhole which completely destroyed these people's yards after they were moved in for 6 months. We do not have these issues with HDPE. I do between 80 and 90 utility projects for single-family residential homes between Rapid City, Meade County, Box Elder, Pennington County. I've dug up, in the last 10 years, I've dug up one poly line because my installer forgot to put an insert in the end of it, and it won't seal without the insert. But it was user error. It was not pipe manufacturer or quality. This is something that Rapid City needs to not only grant this exception, but we need to move forward, and Dale Tech and I have had the conversations, getting the design criteria manual changed. This would be step number one. That would be the most bang for the buck, if you will, when we talk affordable housing. I checked prices today, and Jeff Carsrud is here from Wynn Nelson. So is the manager from WL Plastics, who is, by the way, a manufacturer in our city limits that manufactures HDPE pipe that we can't use in our city limits. Today, the price is 1/10. Actually, it's more than 1/10. The price per foot for HDPE today is 49 cents. The price per foot, that's about a foot of copper, is $5.84. So we're talking a ninth of the price, or 11th of the price, sorry, less than a tenth cheaper, or of the cost. And it's proven, not only in our state, but around the country. We have a builder here that filed for this exception that came from the Colorado, Wyoming area, and he told me for 15 years that he's been doing developing, they've been using HDPE in these surrounding states. Why can't Rapid City, who is on a big push for affordable housing, save the homeowner on an average, let's just call it 100 feet. That's easy math. That's $500 a house, which comes right off the lot cost or the builder's cost when they build the house. Just like that. Where else can we save $500 with a signature and change in policy that everybody else around us is doing? We can't. There's no other place. So it is silly that we don't make this change, not only from a cost perspective, but also usability perspective.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Any other public comments on any of the items, 32, 33, or 34? Chair recognizes Del Tech. 32? Oh. We'll recognize Del Tech for a presentation. Thank you. Should I read it in? Okay. Item number 32, PW 013018-28, importance of standardization materials for residential water service lines within the public right-of-way. And we'll now move that agenda item on to Del Tech. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Public Works Committee. I've got a small 13-slide PowerPoint presentation I want to give to you today regarding standardized materials for residential water lines. As Mr. Boomsma has most recently testified, HDPE, here are the advantages. HDPE is cheaper, as he stated, approximately $5 a foot cheaper. The average service line, since our water requirement is to be on the side of the road, so typically you have a service line on one side of the street that's very short, and then you have one that crosses the street is very long. So the average for the short side is 8 to 12 feet in length, and for the long side 40 to 50 feet in length. And keep in mind, this is just the service line located within public right-of-way, so it's from the public water main to the curb stop for each property. So roughly the savings on average, if you average the two lengths for a block or an area, if a person is installing this new, is going to be roughly $120 to $155 per service line saving. Obviously with alternate product like HDPE, difficulties are in locating the product because it's non-conductive. So you've got to install tracer wire and preserve that tracer wire somehow, be it in a tracer wire box or something of that manner so the tracer wire doesn't get destroyed. In 2013, the city commissioned a technical memorandum by a consultant, a nationwide consultant, to look at the use of HDPE as water service lines. The technical memo, as completed, did not recommend that the city at that time use HDPE pipe for water service lines. And there's a number of reasons why. Protection of the right-of-way is critical. Anytime there's a failure in the right-of-way, it's not just the leak of a water service line. It can cause damage if it's catastrophic enough to destroy pavement, curb and gutter, sidewalks, and driveway approaches. Copper has a long and proven track record for the city. City of Rapid City has had copper service lines in the ground since the 1940s, so nearly 70 years. Some of the testimony that you've heard today is that it's an awful product, that it has problems. Well, no product is perfect, but it certainly has worked well in the city of Rapid City. In regards to HDPE service lines, we have no requirements, no specifications for the HDPE. There's many different products. When a person says HDPE service line, there are a number of products on the market today, and they're all a little different. City, we have nearly 25,000 water accounts. So we have that many Services, some of them are combined, however, in the residential area, lines less than 2-inch that are required to be copper, we believe that 85 to 90%. So we've got over 15,000 copper service lines in this town. Just to note, in 2016, there were permits pulled to repair 5 copper service lines. In 2017, there were 14 permits pulled to repair copper service lines. So we don't have a history of large failures of this product. Utility maintenance, that's our group that works for the city, that works for the water department, that is tasked with locating where all these service lines are, and also permitting and inspection of the installation of our service lines. So for that group, there are a number of benefits for sticking with a single product. Longevity, I've already illustrated the benefits of copper and its long service life in the city. It's easier to trace, it's conductive. You can hook up to a curb box and trace where it's located under the street very effectively. Once again, standardization, consistency of materials. Type K copper has been around for a very long time. By using one product, then our inventory costs are kept at a minimum. We don't have to stock repair parts for many, many different products. Not only that, but the specialized training and installation that goes with each product. It's much easier if everyone at utility maintenance is up to speed on the product that is best used and most used in the city. Some of the concerns that our utility maintenance folks have with non-standardized products is the operating history of the material or product. I'll illustrate here in a few slides that some of the other materials that have been used in the city over time and some of the difficulties that we've had with them. Once again, training for inspectors and contractors on the installation and repairs of alternate products. Copper's been around for a long time. People know how to work with it. Potential damage from excavating too close to the pipe. Mr. Boomsma testified that HDP is very tough material, but its installation is a little different. And if the locator wire isn't exactly on top of the HDPE pipe, if it's installed, there's a potential for hitting that plastic pipe since it doesn't match up with the locating wire. Maintaining inventory of spare parts. HDPE pipe is still evolving. It's different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. There's different products coming out all the time that have different requirements for installation. And to try to inventory those parts forever is going to be a difficult task to try to keep that all on hand and records straight as to where all this stuff is installed. Once again, knowing the locations, we have service cards. Every time one is installed, we make a paper record of it, if you will, that is kept in a card file. So if there's an emergency, when we respond to that, it's much easier to know that if we go to an emergency, there's going to be copper there. We know how to work on it. We know how to address it without having to stop, check records, round up the materials for an alternate product. And I guess the final thing that I'd like to showcase, I already mentioned it, is the ability to locate the material after installation. Copper is very easy to locate. The City of Rapid City Utility Maintenance Department does 10,000 locates a year. Roughly half of those are for sewer and half are for water. So we're doing 20 of them a day. We're out locating for either construction projects or design projects or things of that nature where someone's wanting to install something in the public right-of-way and the city is required to locate that. So once again, a huge effort in the location of this material. Back to the technical memo that was done for the city. Motivation for the city to add an alternate material should be based upon the following: meeting nationally recognized standards, improvement to the longevity of the piping system, improvement in life cycle costs which address operation and maintenance concerns. Mr. Boomsma testified today about the cost of the initial installation, but there's been no discussion on the life cycle costs and what the long-term operation and maintenance costs of an alternate material are. Improve constructability of the system and compatibility with the existing system. So a major concern with the addition of any alternate material is the impact on the current and future operation and maintenance procedures of the utility. I've described to you a number of issues with stocking additional materials, and having the expertise to work on any number of materials that are out there are problematic. Poly B, Mr. Boomsma testified that, well, Poly B, we don't do that anymore, so don't, that's a separate issue. Well, it's a big issue. Poly B, it's short for polybutylene. It was a type of plastic water piping that was approved for use by the City of Rapid City from 1978 into the mid-1980s. It was inexpensive, it was easy to work with, but it was unproven. The city discontinued the use of Poly B in the 1980s, and currently the city's still out there replacing those water systems that have either failed or will be failing. The last 3 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, the city has replaced, looks like 29 and 18 is 47 service lines at a cost of $163,000. When a service line fails catastrophically, like a Poly B line can, it doesn't just ruin the line, it ruins curb and gutter, driveways. I know of one instance in my neighborhood where a Poly B line failed in the public right-of-way, and it wiped out about 40 feet of curb and gutter plus half a person's driveway. So it's the reason why those repair costs are quite high, and the city bears the brunt of those costs in the public right-of-way if that's where the failure occurs. Not only that, but there's also Poly B service lines from the curb stop into the house that fail from time to time, and those costs are all on the homeowner to repair those. HDB pros, cost. We've heard that testimony today, that cost. It's much cheaper to install. In time, it may prove to be an equal or better product to that of copper. We just don't know. That's part of the cons. We don't know. It's difficult to trace. And if it's not installed correctly, you may have a higher rate of failure. The Poly B, that was one of the problems, is the connections, the failures at the connection point. Once again, someone driving over a curb stop or causes problems for that connection from whatever type of piping that you use to the curb stop. Here's a little snippet out of the technical memo that was done. The cost savings of HDPE versus copper tubing for service lines may outweigh the risk of not having a long-term proven record for the application. However, no municipal system wants to have widespread implementation of an alternate piping or tubing material that ends up costing more in the long run due to premature repairs or replacements, such as the case with the city's historical specification and allowance of the once popular Poly B tubing materials. That material has now been discontinued. Little history, Rapid City over the years. Lead lines, believe it or not, the city of Rapid City, along with most municipalities across the country, had a history of installing lead water service lines. That connotation today is very negative, as the effects of lead lines on health concerns are out there. The city of Rapid City is lucky because we have a nice stable source water that was not reactive with lead lines. So we don't have a health hazard out there. However, all the lead lines have been replaced, and they've been replaced with copper. Same with galvanized lines. Galvanized steel tubing was the standard at one point in time, and eventually those all rust and corrode and go away. Those lines that are out there, and there's still some in the ground today, when they're replaced with copper. The same with Poly B. All the failures that have occurred have been replaced with copper. So once again, copper is proven. It's got a long track record here in the city of Rapid City. And for operation and maintenance concerns of our utility maintenance folks that have to deal with this on a daily basis, the recommendation is to stick with copper at this point in time. So, conclusion. It's not prudent to introduce this product within the city's right-of-way. Transportation, general public can be affected if there's a failure under the street. The operation and maintenance and overall replacement costs are likely to be less using a proven material. Once again, currently stock the materials on hand to make those repairs, and the amount of time that the affected property owners are out of service is also dependent upon how quickly these lines can be replaced or repaired if something were to happen. We urge caution when allowing private property owners the opportunity to utilize alternate products on private properties from the curb stop to the structure. A lot of times, most of the homeowners don't know what they have in the ground. I bet if you polled 100 homeowners, 95% would have no idea what type of materials connect their home to private utilities or public utilities for that matter. City of Rapid City has allowed exceptions for HDPE pipe on private property, and believe that long-term it's probably a thing that if the private property owner wants to take that risk and install it, that would be an appropriate thing, and we're moving towards that. Therefore, the City of Rapid City must continue to utilize copper tubing within the public right-of-way between the water main and the curb stop at this time. That's Public Works' recommendation and conclusion on this. That is all I have on this item. I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Direct a question to the Public Works Director. First, I'd like to make a motion to acknowledge the presentation, if I can get a second. Dale, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions to start with. That tech manual that you referenced from 2013, the study that was done, so that's been 5 years. I mean, have there been any updates with regards to the HDPE pipe and the rollout of that nationally in terms of standards and how other municipalities are using it? A lot of things change in 5 years, and I guess that my question is, have we revisited that since that time?
No, we have not.
Okay. Let me ask you, Mr. Boomsma brought up kind of some other communities around western South Dakota. What do other cities our size and larger, how do they handle this particular situation between copper and other types of materials?
I don't know that I can speak to that because I'm not familiar with what every city in our size in the state of South Dakota does. I've got some utility maintenance staff here. I don't know if they would feel comfortable coming up speaking to what other communities are using. Certainly we work in the city of Rapid City, and that's what we've geared this towards.
Okay. I think this is, that's kind of getting to what I'm thinking. I know this is directly tied to item 34, which we'll get to. You know, I think this is a good conversation to have for starters when we look at whether we continue with what's tried and true or allowed other materials. You know, this reminds me of this other question. What would it take to be proven? So we said we don't want to use an unproven material. What does it take to be proven in your eyes?
In my eyes, a very long track record with the same material. And when I say same material, there's manufacturers of HDPE pipe that have changed their size, their pressure requirements, their chemical composition over the years. And how do you track that from generation to generation? It's a continuously evolving product, which is a good thing. But there's no, you know, something that was installed in the ground 20 years ago is not the same as it is today. So I don't know that I can answer that or give you even a window of what is a proven product.
Okay. So I do think this is a good discussion to have because things are always changing, obviously, in the industry, and I don't pretend to be an expert on these matters, and I think we have experts who have spoken and probably will speak, and you and your staff as well. So I'm not sure I want to make such a long-term decision on this on an appeal. I feel like this is a conversation for long-term purposes that should be had between staff and development and come back to council. So it's going to be unlikely for me to make any changes to this because on an appeal, because if we do that, then how am I going to say no, and if we turn around and say, well, we don't want to use this after all, but we've already granted an appeal, I don't want to go back and forth like that. So just so everybody knows, my mindset, at least here at this committee meeting, is I'm probably taking a very conservative approach today on the appeal. But I do think this is worth a discussion between staff and an ongoing discussion, maybe a task force or some sort of group that gets together to talk about what's happening within the industry, what the standards are nationally, how we would approach any sort of changes. Would we pilot a program before we would launch it larger? I don't know. I think those are worth discussing, so I don't think an absolute no, never, this will never happen is appropriate. At the same time, I don't think we should jump right into making a change on something that's proven, as we have had with copper, and you said no item is perfect, and I appreciated the illustrations of that. So, just for today, I'm unlikely to probably make any changes. However, I do encourage, again, getting together, looking at the design criteria manual, as that should be reviewed, on a regular basis between those who are doing the work and the city staff who have to go and make these repairs, and especially in the public right-of-way. I would like to see those conversations still had so that we can progress as a city. However, I don't want to make that kind of decision again on an appeal. I'd rather make that in a more strategic manner moving forward. So with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dale, just to follow up on the previous conversation we just had, was the date of the document that we're looking at right now with this using the standardized materials. I'm looking up the name of the title for the technical memorandum, and it was produced in 2013. And I'm just looking to see if there's any additional data that we could get from, say, the South Dakota Municipal League or the National League of Cities, if they've got any other information. I know there's some suggestions or recommendations within this document as well. And I have to agree with some of the recommendations in there, but it's 5 years old. The go slow approach. So I'd be interested in see if there's any current data that's out there. Are you aware of any at this time?
No, that's been beyond the scope of, the city to work on things like that. We could certainly revisit the technical memo and the data behind it and poll the communities that participated in that data gathering effort to see if things have changed with them. And that, I think, might be the quickest way to get to see if there have been changes made since the last time it was looked at.
Thank you. And then is it possible you can put up that last slide again that you had the utility maintenance crew and CHIPS crew that have to be involved in this? Because what they have to go through and the experiences that they've undergone so far, I hate to put them in a position of having to double stock everything and in mass quantities when we haven't really have a proven product yet. But let me hasten to say is that the product has potential. The HDPE looks like it has great potential. But again, I want to go slow on this because all these previous products had great potential at that time, but then they get proven otherwise. So Sorry, I'm just doing a quick reread of those concerns that the staff has that is actually out doing the front line work on this. Is there another slide that has the pros and cons? Yes. I think this is where I'm kind of balking at the whole situation, is because what our crews have to undergo at this time, and the other consideration that I have is experience on this. Do our crews have any time frame for experience on handling these newer products?
Well, it would be a concerted education and training and certification effort if we were to adopt a new product. I couldn't tell you how long that would take to roll down not only to city utility maintenance crews, but to all of the other licensed trenching contractors in the city.
Right. Thank you. I think that's all I need at this point, Dale, but I'm more interested in ongoing data collection, and like I said, the South Dakota Municipal League may have something, and other reports within this technical memorandum also has some concerns that were raised. So I'm very okay with going a little bit slower and collecting more information at this time. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman John Roper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dale, I appreciate you bringing this forward. You know, I see a lot of things here that I find really interesting. We're talking about collecting data, and we're talking about, you know, how this really doesn't have any long-term, you know, use, whatever. But we've got the experts sitting right here in the audience, and I'm wondering if I could talk to somebody from WL Plastics. I mean, they manufacture it. They should know whether this product has been proven, how long it's been proven for, and, you know, if they're selling an inferior product, they probably wouldn't be in business. So if I could ask one of you guys from WL Plastics, if you wouldn't mind, you don't have to.
I got a little bit of information with me.
Oh, I would appreciate it. I'd like to hear both sides, because I think this is a very one-sided argument.
I'm Shane Foster with WL Plastics, the Northern Region Sales Manager for the company, covering Montana, the Dakotas, all the way to Wisconsin. So I pulled off some stuff from the PE Alliance website, from the industry showcase that I just went to. Why use HDPE? It's a leak-free system if installed correctly with the proper training. Corrosion resistant, it has reduced maintenance, long service life. It's tough, ductile, and flexible, and has superior seismic resistance also. You were asking about communities around the area that might use it. The closest one that I have on the list would be Colorado Springs, and they have a system-wide acceptance following years of research with HDPE. Duluth, Minnesota, same thing, system-wide acceptance. Those are about that's the closest two on the list that I have here. We manufacture, it has a lifespan, they're saying greater than 100 years. So, if installed correctly.
And this, can I ask you a question real quick? This generation of product, how long has this generation been out? That was one of the questions that Dale Tech had asked.
The resin that is currently available right now is a 4710 resin, and we've been there for the last 7 years. And like he stated, they're always working on an advancement for the resin. But this is the last 7 years, and I don't see it changing anytime in the near future. If it changes, it's just going to get better as time goes along.
And I agree with that. Let me ask you a little bit about your future generations. Have you had a lot of failures in your generations before this last one?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I have basically 12 years in the HDPE field experience, so haven't seen a lot of failures in my 12 years in the business. I mean, we have national gas companies throughout the U.S. that use the product on main lines, oil and gas companies, water, municipalities, you name it, everybody's using it and haven't had any failures come back. What few failures that have came back always relate back to the installation process. It wasn't installed correctly, or the person wasn't trained that installed it.
And can I ask you, but since I have you here, and I hope that you don't mind, but how difficult is it to train on the installation of this? What is, is it a training process that lasts weeks, days, months?
I think it's just a couple of days. I'm not a trained certified butt fuser, but I think it's just a couple of days training. McAvoy Manufacturing out of Tulsa does a class. We may have an engineer that could come up and do a class for a couple of guys or whoever. I know we had a guy within WL Plastics that just recently retired that did butt fusion training certification, and we have not replaced that position yet.
Okay, thank you very much. And one of the last things that I just want to touch on a little bit that we've been talking about here is the cost of stocking a tremendous amount of product. Well, fortunately, we have the manufacturer in Rapid City, so we wouldn't have to stock a tremendous amount of we could actually buy a lot as we go because we're lucky enough to have the manufacturer. And I want to thank you for coming into Rapid City. I was part of helping the former mayor bring you to Rapid City, and I always thought it was kind of ridiculous that we have a factory that produces this in Rapid City and we don't use it in Rapid City. So I really hope that in the near future we will be using this product like many, many, many other municipalities around the country. And I think it's the wave of the future. I mean, not only is a lot less expensive, but it isn't corrosive, it lasts a long time. In my opinion, it's been proven. It's been out there a decade. How much, or more than a decade, how much longer do you need? I mean, yeah, we've had copper in the ground for 70 years. It's worked great. It's got a 70-year track record. But if we're going to wait 70 years for this, if that's what we need for a track record, I mean, that's a little bit ridiculous. So, and when the professionals in the industry are saying they want to use it, there's a lot of people out there, homeowners, that I know would like to see this and have this at least going from the curb stop to their house. So at the very least, I would like to see this council do something about it to make it easier to be able to use it from the curb stop to the house instead of having to, come in and ask for a variance every time. So anyway, thank you.
And
Thank you.
we're always open for you guys to come out and take a tour, see how it's made, see the end product, see the beginning product. So
And
anytime,
I forgot to mention, thank you for expanding again out there too.
you bet.
All right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Very good. Mr. Foster, while you're still up, I'd like to ask a question. So one of the discussions from within the presentation was the traceable product, how it can or can't be traceable, and that was a defining factor on the trace wire. Is that product something that's considered being developed where it would have something in it that eventually would be traceable? Because that's a big deal to be able to trace what's in the ground in 50 years from now.
Right. I'm not aware of us coming up with anything that has a built-in tracer wire or anything like that in the near future. I mean, there's other options out there besides the tracer wire that he was talking about. There's also detection tape, and there's some little detection plastic balls that you can put down the line ever so often. I mean, there's other products besides the wire that are probably more cost-effective.
Thank you. Councilman Nordstrom.
Mr. Foster, if I can call you back up one more time, please. I can't remember exactly who gave me the tour out there, but I thank you in your business for giving me the tour of your facility out there a few years back. Very intriguing, very interesting, and I think the product still has great potential. Have you had a chance to read over the technical memorandum that has been produced by the city staff and our consultants?
No, I have not.
Okay. The reason I'm raising some concerns, and not red flags, but just want to use the caution approach, is that part of this document says that the HDPE is not allowed in these areas, and they conducted a survey. And hopefully you get a chance to read over that technical memorandum just to see what your point of view is on that, because they've raised some issues all the way from neutral to satisfactory. But there's 13 municipalities, if I'm reading this correctly, that will not allow HDPE in their municipality. So it's just an awareness issue, and using, I think you mentioned 2 cities, Colorado Springs and another area. Duluth, Minnesota. What I'm interested in is the comparison of soils, what we have to deal with compared with what Rapid City has. Have you got any experience in that area?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, thank you. And I'm also intrigued by the ability or the capability that HDPE has for tracing as well. Because my first thought was, okay, to trace this, we got to use copper wire, am I correct? Mm-hmm. And if we're going to avoid using copper lines, it's one of those factors that I have to consider is like, does that make any sense? And if we're going to install a different product within the HDPE, I'm very amenable to that so that we can actually trace it. Because Chip and his crew out there have to go out and find those lines in some way, somehow, and now we're talking another device that we have to bring on maintenance staff to have available for us. So I just need more education on this. And again, I just think this product has great potential, but I just want to use the go slow approach. Right. So if you get a chance to read over that technical memorandum, and I'm open for suggestions, corrections, amendments, whatever. So
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair recognizes Councilman John Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask Mr. Boomsma a question? Dane, can you? Now, Dane, I know you install HD PE pipe. Can you tell me how you install it with the tracer so they can understand this?
So we use the same tracer wire that the utility maintenance staff uses on their sewer line that they currently trace, only it's blue instead of green. And the copper wire that we put for tracer wire is PVC coated, and it's I don't remember, a 14 or 16 gauge wire. That's all the amount of copper there is, and that's how they locate their sewer lines. That's how they locate their water mains currently. So we're not adding any new device to their wheelhouse or to their service trucks. It's the same wire that's already in the ground, because we use plastic sewer lines, SDR 35. We use PVC water lines, which are not traceable without a tracer wire. And we have an applicable use and installation to make sure that the city staff, which is tested at the end of every project to make sure that those tracer wires are intact. Just on the cost aspect, the CTS, which is copper tube size HDPE, uses the same fittings as the copper does. So the only items that, when we're talking just service lines, we're not talking mains, just service lines, which this is exception was requesting, it's the same fittings. So the only thing that the city's having to stock is a roll of pipe that comes in 300, 1,000, however much you want, which gets cheaper than the 48 cents the longer you go. Copper, you have two lengths you can buy it in, a 60-foot and a 100-foot. So if we have a 40-foot service line, we have 20 feet wasted because we're not going to run a 20-foot line and splice it, especially with the problem with copper. So the cost to the city to get ready to prepare for maintaining this HDPE line is buy a 300-foot roll of poly at probably 40 cents a foot and keep it in the shop. All the fittings are the same for the service lines. And an insert. You need a little metal insert that's, I don't even know, 80 cents. I'm not even sure.
Since I have you here, Dane, can I ask you a question? You probably went through the training to install this, haven't you?
We have. I mean, in the training, the gentleman from WL Plastic was talking about butt fusion and things like that.
Yes.
He's talking mains. He's talking big water lines. What we're talking just today is just the service line, just from the main to the curb stop to the house. And so you talk about taking baby steps to prove a product. What better place to start than a 1-inch service line? Now, eventually, we would like to see a 6-inch main be the HDPE, but I think we do need to take baby steps. And the service line has a proven track record in communities. If we do the research, it's going to be there, that it's proven itself. So the training is not a couple of days. If we had a couple of hours, their staff, city staff, my staff, from my pipe layers up to my superintendents can learn this product in a couple of hours and the do's and don'ts. It is not that much different than copper when you're talking the fittings and the connections.
And can you tell me, because you may know, the cost of the equipment? Do you have any idea on the cost of the equipment to do, you know, the butt fusing and
So the butt fusing, again, that's completely different.
So you don't have to do that in the service lines. You just connect the service lines.
Nope, you use the
With
same
connections.
compression fittings that we use with copper, or you can use nipples, which
Okay.
most people use the compression fittings because that CTS, copper tube size fittings, are readily available at every supplier in town.
Okay.
So another cost thing that we have to consider, right now with copper water service lines, we have to use anode protection, cathode protection anodes, in the soils that test hot, which we know we have a lot of those in our area. There's a maintenance cost to that install of that cathode protection. There's also a lifespan of that cathode. Those need to be dug up and replaced every so many years. I've heard 15 to 30 years that needs to be dug up and replaced. That's a cost that I haven't seen the city show, and I don't know that they know a cost, because I don't think that our city utility maintenance is maintaining these cathodes. They get put in initial construction, and unless they would get replaced, I don't know that we're maintaining them. But that's something that we need to look at, that's something that is a cost item that we don't have with HDPE pipe.
So really, in reality, just doing the service lines, there's not a tremendous amount of cost to the city.
Very, very little. You're talking a product that's less than 1/10 the cost, and you can buy it in a bigger roll, so you get a bigger discount. The cost is very, very minimum.
Or very little training to the city.
Very little training would be
Thank
required on a
you, Dave.
service line.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. I do have Councilman Nordstrom again in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you allowing us to have this full discussion on this. Mr. Karsrud, can I have you come to the podium?
Thank you. I was going to ask you to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We have you as a comment sheet as well, but so if you want to make those comments first, and then I've got a couple questions for you.
Be glad to. My name is Jeff Karsrud. I'm the president of Wind Supply here in Rapid City. We're a plumbing wholesale company. When we consider, the first thing I want to let you know that I'm not advocating for or against any project because I don't know anything about the project at hand. I was asked to come on behalf of the product that we're talking about today, so I don't know anything about the project at hand. I've been selling HDPE and copper for just under 30 years personally myself, and Gerald Ames with Northwest Pipe, who's my competitor, he's much older than I am, and he's been selling it for much longer than that. So yes, so first I want to say that we had this same discussion back when we had a hard time going from concrete pipe and ductile iron pipe, sewer, we're talking sewer, to PVC. We had the same exact discussions. They talked about the tracing, how you're going to trace it. You got to put copper in the ground. Well, the reason why you got to put copper tracer in the ground if you're not putting copper pipe in or steel is because you got to be able to get a detector to see it. So we already have the detectors. It's the same technology. It's the same thing. It's a 12 gauge or a 14 gauge wire that is jacketed with PVC. It's not giant, and the cost of it is very minimal. But we had the same discussion when we did that, and finally we evolved and developed to to C900 and the SDRs and the PVC sewers and all that kind of stuff that we do now. Well, we also had the same discussion when we went from copper pipe in the homes to PEX. Now, I can tell you that that it used to be 22 years ago, we sold probably 95% copper, 5% other product. Now it's just the opposite. It's about 90% other, which is PEX or HDPE, and then 10% copper. The only thing that really floats our copper sales is the water lines, and believe me, I'd rather sell the copper. I mean, my sales are 10 times higher. So I'm not trying to advocate on any other reason other than the fact that it is proven. We don't have it proven in Rapid City because we haven't used it. But I've been selling HDPE for literally 28 years, and when we talk about we probably should talk about what that is, because we've just thrown those letters out. It's high density polyethylene. Okay, it's not butylene. It's and poly B, which you saw the slides, was before my time when it was installed, and it wasn't the pipe that failed in the poly B. There's been maybe just a few failures of the pipe. It was at the fittings. There was a bad O-ring in those fittings. They figured that out and they got rid of it, but we don't have the same problem because we actually use the same fittings on the pipe as Dane talked about. We use the same. It's the same exact fitting. It's not a different part number. It's the same exact fitting. The only thing you got to do is put an insert in there. So as far as training, I can train any of you folks within about 5 minutes because all we got to do is put an insert in. That's it. That's it. I heard a lot about HDPE has been evolving. I would say that maybe, as Shane talked about, there was a difference in resin 7 years ago, but for the most part, it's been a lot the same. They just rate it. There is a lot of differences because they make it in different sizes and different thicknesses based on the spec that you need. A lot of municipalities use poly today, and they actually ask for 100-pound or 160-pound. In this area, we've used 200-pound forever, and then within the last year, we've changed that to 250. So we're supplying a 250-pound poly, because I sell a lot of poly. High-density polyethylene, I sell a lot of poly. It's just not to Rapid City. I sell all over the place, sorry. But just not to Rapid City. So it's proven, just not to Rapid City, because we haven't tried it. Nor have we probably studied it much. We talked about the cost comparisons. I think it was Richie or John, one of you guys talked about the soil. I think it was John. Talked about the soil differences. Well, that's the beautiful thing about most of the products, the PEX or the polyethylene products, is soils don't affect their longevity like they do copper. The reason why you got to have anodes for copper is because unlike metals and other products, fight and eat copper away. That's why you have to have anodes. Well, if we don't install or maintain anodes, what the anodes are there for is so that if anything gets eaten away, it's the anode gets eaten away, and the copper pipe is preserved because electrolysis happens. Well, if that anode is in a tough soil or against other metals, that anode will get eaten away, and then there's no protection against that pipe. Do we see failures in high-density polyethylene? I know of not one, and I've been doing this a long time. Have we seen problems with copper? And I'm not talking about fittings, because every fitting system is going to have a failure at the fitting if not installed correctly. Every system. But in pipe itself, do I ever remember any failures in copper? We see it all the time. See it all the time. So I think this is one of those things, and I know Dale, and I appreciate Dale for, because sometimes it's hard to get a whole group of people to change or take a look at new products, but I think this is one that we probably really, really should take a look at, because I think it is something that could save the end user, the city, everybody money, and it is a better product in my opinion. There was one other thing that I wanted to touch. Oh, theft. So you've got theft on job sites. There is nothing better on a job site that a person would love to steal and take than copper. If there's poly lines laying on the job site, they're going to leave them.
Thank
So
you.
I think that was all I had.
Thank you. You still have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Mr. Carsford, again, same question to you is, have you had a chance to read this technical,
No, I'd love to
technical
see it.
memorandum? You've
I have
signed
not.
it?
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Did you see all the operators that were surveyed under that report?
No,
and how they responded?
I have not seen the report.
Okay.
So if I can get my hands on that, is it on your city website? Is it?
Yes.
What's it called?
In fact, it's linked to today's agenda item.
I think we have information. Can you send me that?
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'd love to see it.
Yep. Absolutely.
But you're always
I'm-
going to have communities
Yep.
and groups of communities that are not adapting or ready to change yet. You're always going to have that.
And I'm in that same contingency.
Yep. Yep.
And looking at things evolving and things still continuing to move forward. But
The biggest cities in our nation still, because of different pressures, still use ductile iron and some of these other products I mentioned instead of PVC.
okay, one of the things that I'd like to have you take a look at when you get this report is my main curiosity right now is not objection, but just curiosity. So that everybody understands that I'm very interested in this product. But again, I want to use the go slow approach. But these operators that are giving us a survey, again, it's 5 years old. But what they were reporting is that the HDPE was allowed in at least one application, more than 2/3 of them. And then there's about 1/3 of these folks that will not allow HDPE in. And if we can get a correction or amendment or an update on this, I'd be happy to take a look at those.
So can I maybe
information.
interject there?
Yes.
There's a lot of different kinds of HDPEs, it's been said.
Yes.
There is, they make different kinds. So you might have some of those municipalities who decided to allow all of it, because as Dale is kind of taking a more of a cautious approach. If I was to take a look at this, I would allow one kind of HDPE, and it's not the one that's made in Rapid City, I'm sorry, Shane, but it's the copper tube size. That way you can continue to use your same fittings and you know that everything's going to be the same. Some municipalities maybe opened it up to all different types, which is IPS and CTS, and different SDRs from SDR 9, 11, 13, all different thicknesses. So they may have had a mess because they opened it up too much. I don't know what the problems were, but if we were to take a look at maybe just a laser-focused, you know what, we'll allow one, whether it's IPS type or CTS. IPS is the inserts. Everybody knows the little barbed insert you put inside of a pipe. That's IPS size. It has some problems because you typically got to use a brass or bronze fitting on the end, so you're still not getting away from a ferrous product. And you've got restriction in flow a little bit, because that's got to go inside there. The beauty of CTS product is it's a touch smaller on the outside, but the inside diameter is about the same as the other. So you have pure flow, so there's no restriction in flow, and then the fitting it fits on the outside diameter of the product. The outside diameter of CTS is always exactly the same. So you may have had problems with municipalities speccing one and not the, wouldn't you agree that that could be a confusion? Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question for you, Jeff. You belong to a national association of wholesalers, I presume, and
I do.
Yeah.
ASA and National Wholesaler Association, yeah.
so have you gotten any information from your associations on HDPE? And I understand there's different varieties, different variations, but the ones that we're looking at today, have you got a report, anything that we can review?
No. I was asked to come
Will we
here just a
obtain
day or
one?
two. I was asked to come here a day or two ago, so not prepared, but I could sure look into it.
No, that's
and
fair.
See if they have looked,
yeah.
if they've looked at the issue. Absolutely. I could look
Yeah.
at that. Because I kind of agree with Jason. I don't know if a decision today would be smart because
No.
we all don't know enough yet.
Correct.
Yeah,
No.
but at least we're talking about it, and I think that's a plus when you're talking about things like this.
Totally agree. I think with this conversation has to be had, so, because anything that allows us to produce a smaller cost for a house, and I'm not meaning affordable housing, I'm just saying a cost for a home, if we can help out the homeowners in some fashion in that degree, I would definitely want to take a look at it. But again, it's the safety part of it, the proven track record and everything else that goes along with that. So I'd be very interested in what you have for data or could get obtained for data on
I'll take a
this
look at it.
product.
Yep, I will.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councilman Roberts, please.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any questions for you, Jeff. You can sit down.
Hi, John.
But I would like to, I know that Mr. Freitag wanted to make some comments on this too, so if you'd like to make some comments, Bill, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Bill Freitag, 3821 Brook Street. It's almost, sitting here, it's almost like I'm hearing Jason, that we don't use any of the poly pipe in Rapid City. That's not true. From the curb stop, your curb stop, not under the street, your curb stop to your house, presently, you can ask second floor for an exception to use the poly pipe. So, and it's being done from time to time, but not as much as you would think, because it's one of these tightly held secrets in Rapid City. I didn't know you could do that until 2 years ago when Stacy Titus told me that I could do it. Ron Weifenbach was with me at the time, and Ron says, well, if we can do that with an exception, why don't we just change the design criteria manual so we don't have to go through the exception process? So, and I want you to know this, that WL Plastics, I think it's shameful that we have so few manufacturers in Rapid City, and here we got a manufacturer in Rapid City, and we're telling them their product is good enough for the rest of the world, but don't you put it in Rapid City. However, in front of WL Plastics building, guess whose pipe's in the ground? WL Plastics pipe. I was going to buy the ground across the street from them. And I was going to use their product because they're the manufacturer in Rapid City. I want to use their product. That's what triggered me going up to second floor, and Ron Weifenbach with me, was to start the conversation that I intended to use their product in my subdivision. Okay? I want you to know a couple other things. A lot of these reports, Richie, are written by the manufacturers, or they're paid for by the manufacturers, or they're influenced by the manufacturers. And so you're going to find that slanted toward them, and you know it. That's the way everything gets put into place. Currently, there's a 4-inch piece of pipe that's bent into a 90-degree elbow. It's got a total of about 6 feet of length, and it's strong because it has to support a plumbing tree. And if you don't know what a plumbing tree is where that pipe comes through your concrete floor. You got all your valves and all your, it's heavy stuff that supports your fire sprinkler system. So that's the pipe that had to be there. In my buildings, in my industrial buildings, that isn't there. The reason it isn't there is 2 reasons. Number one, it's an inferior product, and number 2, the manufacturers have got it into the books, and so guess what this little piece of pipe would cost me? $500? That'd be too much to pay? Would $1,000 be too much to pay? How about $3,500 for that 6-foot piece of pipe? So I'm not putting it in. I refuse to put it in. You know what's in my buildings? WL Plastics pipe, because it's a real thick wall pipe. It could support that plumbing tree probably 3 or 4 times. That's in my building. Now, with regard to that being in my buildings, the city's own fire department up by Black Hills Corpse building, do you know which one I'm talking about? Had that $3,500 pipe because that was the code and you had to do it. I mean, that was God's law that you had to have that $3,500 pipe. That's not there anymore. What's in their building is WL Plastics pipe that's just like what's in my building, and the reason that that's there is because it failed. It didn't even last 10 years before the electrolysis in the soil ate it up. So call Tim Billings and ask him what's in the fire department. What's in their building? Ask him what's in my buildings. So this idea that we're not using this at all and there's no history, that's bull. You know, the enemy of what's new and good is the old established what do you call it, status quo. You know, and it's time that we stop this. Here's what the real issue is. I'm just going to tell you. Second floor really doesn't have a big problem with me going from the curb stop to the to your house with the plastic. However, they're going to make me take a piece of paper to you that says this is inferior, and I want you to know it's inferior, and you got to sign it. Well, what a crock of bull that is, because it's not inferior, and who in the world would ever go to their customer and say, listen, I want to put a piece of inferior pipe in, and I want you to sign off on it. So it's just not right. The real issue is they don't want to replace the copper under the road. That's what they don't want to do. They want that to remain copper. They don't want that to be plastic. Of all the places you want it to be plastic, it's under the road, because when the copper fails there, and what it costs to fix it is the taxpayer's expense, not the homeowner's expense.
Mr. Freitag, I'm going to put it back to Councilman Roberts to close his question, if I could, since he
Oh, okay, I
needs to
thought,
have control of the question.
okay.
Anyway, Bill, I appreciate that, and I understand that, and that's another question that I would love to ask. Unfortunately, I have to leave. I have work to do, so I hate to leave the dais right now, but I do have to. So I understand what you're saying there, Bill, and especially when you're talking about, you know, because right today we've been talking about basically 2-inch copper lines. So if a 2-inch copper line is costing the homeowners $500, imagine what a 6 to an 8 to a 12-inch copper line underground would cost. So anyway, I hate to do this, but I have to leave, and thank you, Bill, for your opinion, and Monday night I'll be there all night long. So thank you.
Councilman
Lisa,
Jason
can I
Sullivan?
make one more comment?
I've got to skip back to Q, and it's back to Jason Sullivan.
Just a final comment. I think this has been a great discussion. Thank you all for educating us. We have a lot to learn up here, and obviously we're not the experts, and I do respect both sides of this conversation. So I would just reiterate my desire that our city staff and our builders and developers in town work together to review if and how this should be done. I heard Colorado Springs, following years of research, went forward. I'm not feeling the research in an organized manner for our sake has been done. So I would just like to see that effort done so that we can make that determination in a more educated and thoughtful manner. This is a great beginning, I think, of that conversation. And so I do appreciate everybody. There's some great points, really smart people, great people doing great things in our community, and staff as well. You know, they have great points too. And Dale, thank you for your presentation. So just a desire to work together as much as we can to see about how we take those baby steps, as Dane mentioned, if needed. But we got to work together. It's the only way it works is if we work together. So I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too appreciate, Dale, your presentation. I thought that was very factual. It gives us both sides, and I think the conversation will move forward from this, and I appreciate everybody that brought it forward, because I think this is not going to end here. I think this is the beginning, and we have a great future ahead. We need to do more, and I think this will do so. But we do have a motion on the floor to acknowledge the presentation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 33, BW 112817-17, appeal of denied exception request from KTM Design Solutions on behalf of Dean Ham to waive the requirement to construct sewer main along Muirfield Drive, City File 17EX197, the only exception denied by staff out of 4 total exceptions submitted for the project. This was continued from the January 9th, 2018 Public Works Committee meeting, and I recognize Councilman Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a motion that we continue this to Monday night without recommendation, because I literally just got this summary as I set up here. Haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm uncomfortable making decisions without just a chance to review it. So if I can get a second. Second. And I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes no longer. Very good. So I've got a motion and a second to continue this to Monday without a recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 34, PW 013018-29, the appeal of a denied exception request from Renner and Associates to waive the requirements of standard specification section 8.2A for and allow the use of HDPE pipe in lieu of K copper for residential water services within the street right-of-way. We've used it. We've used it. And I recognize Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to give the opportunity to the builder to share anything if they wanted to. I didn't know if Travis, if you needed to say anything. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that you had your chance. I know you didn't have an item up here. So I would make a motion, but I've already started talking enough. It's probably inappropriate for me to do so.
I have nobody else in the queue.
Give you a chance to kind of think about it.
Chair recognizes Councilman Nordstrom.
Travis, if I may take an opportunity to have a chat with you on this item, could you come up to the podium? Sorry to catch you unprepared. The alternative motive is to allow Alderman Solomon have a chance to kind of think about what he wants to say next. No problem. Just kind of explain a little bit what your intention is and what you're looking at trying to accomplish over there. Again, I think HDPE is a good product. It has the potential of being a good product. And I want to look forward to having that opportunity to have this discussion with you about what your intention is here with this. And please get me educated.
So I guess it's more, this is more like a blanket approach. I mean, granted, my development's kind of underway right now, so as a group, we're kind of using mine to get the ball rolling to try and help everybody. Yes, it would be for my benefit, but our main focus is our costs just keep going up and up and up and up. So we are trying to find every way that we can to reduce our costs to give the end consumer the benefit. And again, and this is my own personal philosophy, I mean, we're not in here trying to propose a product that's cutting a corner either. I mean, we're not going to do anything wrong. If it's not right, you're going to pay 4 times what you saved anyways trying to fix it, so why do it? Again, so yes, we are trying to do the HDPE in the street. We would really like to be able to do the services to the homes as well. Again, it goes back to maintenance, cost. Like, I wonder how much we're actually digging up the anodes that we're supposed to be digging up and maintaining. I mean, what does that cost to go do that? I mean, that's a massive cost. And then next is, what if I told my homeowners that they need to go in their yard and dig up an anode? What's their response going to be? I mean, that's not going to be good. And realistically, you need to do that to preserve the life of that copper line. That's not an option. So again, basically, I'll refer back to everything that we discussed earlier. Those are all my sentiments and what I would like to see done as well.
Thank you. Just a further explanation, I see we've got part of this exception is for the street right of way. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
So you want to put the HDPE on the street as well?
Correct.
I like the concept. However, I'm not ready for that yet. I'd like to see some more data, some more information before I go that route. Again, it has great potential of going that and helping you, as far as I'm concerned, helping you with the cost factor on it. So I'm looking forward to that potential being arrived at. However, I'm a little cautious yet of going into the streets with HDPE, but I would be receptive to the concept of having from the curb stop to the home being HDPE. So at least we have a place to start with to have the potential of starting some data collection, real live, here within the city of Rapid City, especially in your neighborhood, which is, shall I say, a little bit different in the soil composition and that we have to deal with out there. So from that point, I like the idea of from the curb stop to the home, and then having copper in the street right away, right now. That's what I'm thinking at this point. So just because I need some proven data.
And with that too, guys, like the other part of like when I say like our blanket approach to this is, you know, now that we're all getting wind of that we can put this line, you know, from the curb stop to the house. So what's going to happen now is, you know, the city staff's going to get pounded with exception requests. So again, we're wasting time, we're wasting money of everybody, you know. So why don't we do these things the right way? Get the design criteria changed, and then move forward. And then again, that's saving all of us. There's no sense in wasting our time.
Agreed. Looks like Mr. Boombas wants to add a couple of comments. If I may call you forward.
I just wanted to kind of make sure that you guys understood the exception process has been recepted by Second Floor in the Public Works Department. I've got one in process right now. I called Ted before the meeting. He signed off on it. We're waiting for Stacy's signature on it. Mr. Freitag touched on that affidavit that we're required to sign. Apparently, with further consultation with the city attorney's office, they've decided that is not necessary. So, and that's information just prior to this meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood that Second Floor is working with us on those exceptions. They have gotten rid of that form. From my understanding, that was a verbal phone conversation with Ted when we talked about that. And the only other thing I want to point out, because we're talking about all this copper under the street because that's a city cost. Utility maintenance will not fix my service line under the street. It is my requirement all the way to the corp. I replaced a 70-year-old copper line on East Denver Street, and granted it lasted that long, but it was my cost to bore the street. And so we keep talking about this cost to the city. Utility maintenance does not maintain from the corp, which is the connection at the main, to the house.
Right.
They maintain just the main. So regardless what we put under the street, that's still a homeowner builder responsibility. So I just wanted to make sure we're all clear on that. That's not a city cost. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the moment, if I may yield the floor.
Thank you. Councilman Solomon?
Okay, I will make the motion to deny the appeal for this exception request, if I can get a second and retain the floor, just real quick. And by doing this, this is not a denial forever. This is a denial with just the hopes that we can have this conversation that I've now spoken of 3 times. And it sounds like there's some cooperation, and I think further looking at the design criteria manual, as Travis Tucker just mentioned, so that we're not having exception requests. So we need to look at what this is, and I think it's appropriate to get together, review that, and maybe just a planned approach, again, that we try a little bit, see how that goes, and then move forward. So just so it's clear, just because I'm denying this, doesn't mean, no, this is never going to happen. That's not my intention at all. Just be consistent. I don't like to make a long-term decision right now on the spot without further research, and so that's why I'm recommending this. Of course, this will go to City Council for full discussion, but this was fantastic. So thank you very much. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Will you allow me to ask Dale a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Dale, from the presentation to the discussion, do you see, as council people have stated in the recent past, this is a time to maybe take a look at the criteria manual? Do you see this as an opportunity to proceed forward, or do you have already a plan for 2018 on that?
This is a discussion that occurs continuously. You know, the 2013 technical memo that was done on behalf of the city was the hardest look at this issue that we've had in a long time. I would suggest that it's probably time to revisit that. We can look at the data, look at if there have been any changes to that technical memo, what types of new products, what types of applications there are out there. You know, my word of caution is let's not run into this blindly. Let's take some time to take a look at it.
Very good. Look forward to that. I think we have plenty in the business that would also like to participate in that update as well. So I appreciate that, Dale. And if there's nobody else in the queue, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.